All right, let's get into it. When you hear Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, you probably think, old, dusty book from history class. But what if I told you it's actually one of the world's first and best self-help books? It's a user's manual for life, written by a guy who went from nothing to Benjamin Franklin. Right from the very beginning, Franklin tells you exactly what he's doing. He's not just bragging about his life. He's reverse engineering his own success. He's handing you a blueprint and saying, here's how I did it. You can do it too. It's this incredible invitation. So let's start where he did, with learning how to learn. Because that was his foundation. It was this relentless, almost obsessive approach to self-education. He didn't just enjoy reading. No, he treated his own brain like an engineering problem, something he could systematically upgrade with the right set of tools. And you've got to remember, this is a kid whose formal schooling stopped at age 10. By 12, he's working in his brother's print shop, but he sets this wild goal for himself, to become a tolerable English writer. I love that word, tolerable. So humble, right? But the question is, how on earth did he pull it off? Well, he created a system, an algorithm really. He'd take a great piece of writing, break it down into its core ideas, and then try to rebuild it himself. It was a workout for his brain. And that last step, jumbling the notes up and trying to put them back in a logical order, that was the masterstroke. He wasn't just learning words, he was learning structure, logic, and how to build a persuasive argument from the ground up. And get this, he was so dedicated that he found clever ways to fuel this learning engine. He read a book about vegetarianism and had a light bulb moment. By switching to cheap veggies and bread, he literally cut his food budget in half. And what did he do with the extra money? He bought more books. Plus, it saved him time so he could read during lunch while everyone else was out. Genius. Okay, so Franklin applied this engineering mindset to his intellect, but he didn't stop there. He pointed it at something way more ambitious, maybe his biggest project ever, the idea of achieving moral perfection. He actually called it his bold and arduous project. His goal, and this is just mind-blowing, was to live without ever making a mistake. He thought, hey, I know what's right and what's wrong, so I should just be able to, always do the right thing. As you can probably guess, he found out pretty quickly it was a lot more complicated than that. So what did he do? He broke the problem down. He came up with a list of 13 virtues. But these weren't just vague goals like be nice. No, each one was a specific actionable command. Temperance wasn't just about drinking less. It was drink not to elevation. Order wasn't just be neat. It was let all your things have their places. They were practical rules you could actually follow. And to hold himself accountable, he created a tracking system. Of course he did. He made this little notebook with a chart. Every single day, he'd go through the list and put a little black mark next to any virtue he'd messed up on. He'd focus on one virtue a week, trying to get that line completely clean and cycle through the whole list 4 times a year. It was a personal performance review every single day. But here's what I love about Franklin. He was a realist. He realized that being morally perfect was not only impossible, but it might not even be a good thing. He tells this fantastic story about a guy who wants a blacksmith to polish his axe until it shines like a mirror. But after turning the heavy grinding wheel for a while, he gets tired and says, you know what, I think I like a speckled axe best. Franklin realized the same was true for him. Striving was important, but a few speckles made him human. And that practicality leads us right to his third major lesson. Franklin knew that success in the real world isn't just about what you do. It's about what people think you do. It's about reputation. As a young printer, trying to get his business off the ground, he knew his reputation was everything. So he made a conscious choice. He wouldn't just be hardworking and careful with money. He would make sure everyone saw him being hardworking and careful with money. He actively avoided anything that could even look lazy or wasteful. He even put on a bit of a show. He would literally push a wheelbarrow full of paper he'd bought through the main streets of Philadelphia. Why? It was a public performance to signal to everyone, especially his customers, this guy is serious. He's not afraid of hard work. It was brilliant marketing. And you can see how powerful this was when he compares himself to a competitor. Franklin dressed simply, worked constantly. His rival? Dressed like a fancy gentleman, partied all the time, and ignored his shop. The result was predictable. Franklin's business went on swimmingly, while his rivals completely failed. Franklin proved that reputation is a real, bankable asset. So Franklin's projects built up his mind, his character, and his business. But he never stopped there. He took that exact same project-based approach and aimed it at a much bigger target, his entire community. He'd look around Philadelphia, see a problem, like fires or a lack of books, and he'd treat it just like one of his personal improvement projects. He'd define the problem, design a solution, and then rally people to get it done. He was basically turning his city into a giant collaborative project. And the results were just incredible. Look at the timeline. He starts a little club for mutual improvement called the Junto, and that club becomes an incubator for ideas that literally build the city. They launch America's first subscription library, then the first volunteer fire department, then the nation's first public hospital. He was building the infrastructure of a modern city piece by piece. And he always saw the bigger picture. He knew the library wasn't just for Philadelphia. He called it the mother of all subscription libraries, a model that could be, and was, copied all over the country, spreading knowledge far beyond his own city. Which brings us to the final and maybe most important point of it all. When you put all these pieces together, you realize that the autobiography itself isn't just a memoir, it's an invitation. You see, the book is Franklin's final greatest project. It's the master blueprint he left behind for all of us. He's showing us step by step how a regular person, through system and effort, can design and build an absolutely extraordinary life. It's a guide that's meant to be used. And at the end, he connects all the dots for us. He says his long life was thanks to temperance, his financial success, that came from industry and frugality. The trust of an entire nation, that was from sincerity and justice. For him, a good and successful life wasn't about luck. It was the direct output of the system he so carefully designed. And that's the question he leaves hanging in the air for all of us. Franklin showed us that your life is the biggest, most important project you will ever get to work on. He gave us his blueprint. So the question is, what are you going to put in yours?